It's the kind of house they don't build anymore. A relic of a time when the world wasn't in such a hurry, when there was still time for a little charm and elegance. It has stood empty for a long while, and at the price, it is a bargain. For a growing young family, it is almost too good to be true.
What do you think?
I love it.
James Brolin, Margot Kidder, Rod Steiger in the Amityville Horror.
God's peace in this house. Get out. Get out.
Hello?
Hello, Kathy. Father Delaney, there's something very important.
Mommy, I want to go home.
What do you want from us?
What's all going wrong? We have to do something.
I'm coming apart! Oh, Mother of God, I'm coming apart!
28 days after the Lutz family moved into their dream house, they were running for their lives. What happened to them is an experience in terror you will never forget, and you will believe in the Amityville Horror.
Welcome to episode 2 of our Amityville. I keep wanting to say retrospective, but it's not a retrospective. It's like a investigation. It's a musing.
It's a series.
It's a
two-parter.
Okay. Yeah, 2-part series of our first, like, very brand new podcast, The Nightmare Hour, where the first thing we decided to tackle was Amityville Horror. The murders, the real life hauntings, supposedly, the books, the movies, which we now, what'd you say, 21 of them?
Yep. There's been 21 films since 1979 up to 2018.
So, like, a terrible thing for us to start while we're still figuring this all out, basically, because there's so much to do.
Yep.
Like, we should have just started with something easy, like, what would have been easy? Like Night of the Living Dead or something?
Yeah, something like that would have been much easier for sure. But I think this one's fun. I think this one is a good sample of what we want to talk about, which is not only horror films, which I think will probably make up 88% of this podcast, but also either true crime or supernatural. Like this series, I think fully encompasses what we want the podcast to be. Movies, true crime, supernatural. Yeah. It hits at all the things.
Well, because I've always, as I got older, as a kid, I didn't know. I just loved horror movies. But as I gotten older, I really love that horror gives us, like, a safe place to be scared about things. Mm-hmm. You can totally be scared, but you know everything's safe. So your brain gets to process it all, and you deal with all this, like, messed up stuff. But then an hour and a half later, you get to turn the lights on and go outside. The theater lights come up, and everything's fine. So I think it's important, like, as a genre of film and everything, really. Like, I think a lot of people should explore it a little more. Like, because, I don't know. Anyway, what I was saying, like, this really lives up to that, too, because not only was it a real-life mass murder, it's led into all this, like, pop culture stuff. And arguably, at least the first few movies are kind of dealing with that kind of, like, trauma. So, like, yeah, it is exactly what we're trying to do. We want, like, real-life scary stuff with cool movies. Can that be our tagline?
Yeah, I think that sounds good. I'm into that. I'm into that conceit or concept. Yeah,
conceit.
Yeah, we'll say it.
Okay.
So part 1, which you hopefully already listened to, we discussed the true crime element of the DeFeo murders, and then we also talked about the supernatural haunting, the supposed haunting of the Lutz family, and chronicles that occurred from all of that. Mm-hmm. And it is a fascinating story, and you can see why it has made so many films. What's interesting is is there's not really another series that I could find or think about that has gone on this long that is really truly like the same premise over and over and over, which is the people in a house and something happened. It's the same somethings that always happen. You know, there's always going to be the red room scene.
Yeah.
There's always going to be the 315. And so, and while there are, you know, one full remake, it feels like that they're all kind of remaking the first film or the book, and trying to, although there's a couple that are just like, let's do the DeFeo murders, but we'll call it Amityville something. So the first film was. So I did a tiny bit of research, not a lot, on the first film and adaptation.
This is what we do.
Yep. So the book was. This all happened supposedly in 1974. That's when the murders happened. 1975 is when the Lutz family moved out, and then 1977 is when Jay Anson's book came out. That was based upon 45 to 50 hours of tapes that the Lutz family gave him. In 1979. After the book came out, it was a huge success. I believe I said it was like 48 or 50 some. It was almost a year at the top of the bestseller book list because I mean, what is better than this true crime like haunting story from a family's everyday family?
And real life consequences. Like they broke their mortgage and left the house after 28 days, and there's court cases. And like it wasn't just a story. It was like they committed. It was real life.
So you have a producer that buys up the book rights very quickly from Jay Anson, and I'm guessing also the Lutzes. I couldn't find that for sure, but it's still important to note that, as mentioned in the previous episode, that the Lutzes never really got a lot of money. I'm guessing they signed a really shitty deal probably pretty quickly on, and they got some money, but it wasn't surely what like somebody like Jay Anson got. However, I don't know how that's changed over the years, but somebody's gotten... Somebody is getting paid for the Amityville name every year, and I think it's MGM from what I can tell. I think MGM's held the rights, so they're or a producer for MGM. Somebody's getting paid for that. But that movie was supposed to be written by Jansen, but the production company rejected the script and then hired Sander Stern to write the script. Now, it's important that...
Is that a real name?
Sander Stern. Yeah, Sander Stern.
Sander Stern?
Sander
That's not a real
Stern.
name.
Yeah. So it's important to know this because I always recall the first film feeling like it was made for TV and thinking it was made for TV because I had seen it on like a tape and it was just kind of like, I don't know, I'm sure it was like a pan and scan version and it just felt very TV. But it's interesting because I found out that, Sander Stern is... notably only done really TV, and it was originally conceived as a made-for-TV film. So
Andy's not real.
yeah, he's just that's the alias for Jay Anson, who wrote a second script. So eventually Sander Stern's script is made. Margot Kidder and James Brolin are cast in the leads.
Oof,
and
sexiest horror couple ever.
No movie's ever been hotter.
I've never been turned on by two people at the same time like so much.
Yeah.
Good God.
So this movie comes out July 27th, 1979, and it comes out to big success. It was made for around $5 million, just under $5 million, and it took in about $90 million. It was notably the highest grossing independent film of all time until 1990 when the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles surpassed it, which I loved that fact, and I had to bring it up. This movie, I think this is important to talk about as we go. This movie has a 28% rating on Rotten Tomatoes. And
really?
And most people hated this fucking movie. And now we can just talk about it. So I think going forward, we'll talk about we'll read the synopsis. So this one I don't think we need to because this is just an adaptation of the supposed true story that we already spoke about. But going forward, we'll read the synopsis and if it's available, the budget. I think most of these have the box office at least, and then the Rotten Tomatoes score. So I will briefly. I won't read the premise. It is just the adaptation of what we already know. What's cool about this movie is the rewatch here. Having not seen this movie, probably like sat down and watched thoroughly. I would say that I actually was shocked how much I enjoyed this movie. From my memory, I didn't like it very much. I think it had a shitty VHS cover, which I attribute to all my likes and dislikes as a kid. It's got a horrible poster that's just like, "For God's sakes, get out!" in huge bold letters. And then it's got like a black and white version of the house underneath the actual house. So it's like you have like Inception levels.
Double house?
Yeah, you have two houses because I think it's the actual book cover, like kind of redone on the poster. Anyways, this movie is rad. I liked it a lot.
I think the first two are the ones that are actually like really had someone trying. Like there's like a lot of production value, like some direction going on. And I think the first one
Cool Hand Luke director.
of these, the first, really?
Yeah.
There you go. But like the first two, of the five we watched, the first two, or the first one really is the only one that like really got the pacing right, like the haunted house movie feel right. Like it starts safe and a little weird stuff happens, and then more weird stuff happens, then it just goes crazy. Like all these other movies, it's just like we're 6 minutes in and like shit's wild. Like I just none of them get the pacing right except for this one, I think.
Yeah, I think this one. I mean, yeah, it still has a little bit of pacing issues for me, I think, but it's
Too
fun.
slow, or
Yeah, it's a tad too slow, I think. But it's I think it starts quick, so you get flashes of the murders, and you get dialogue from that, and I mean it very quickly sets up the DeFeo stuff. I mean, in the opening credits, like that's all you're really given. You just get like a tiny bit of here's what happened, and we're moving on, and then you get this real hot couple, which. I mean, if you're the real George and Kathy Lutz, you're like, fuck yeah, that's how I look. I'm James Brolin, and my wife's Margot Kidder, right?
Yeah, that's what I forgot, because I mean I was a young lad, but just now as a grown man, like those are just two beautiful people. It's incredible. Like if I was the ghosts, I would just be like, we need to like relax a little bit.
And also, I'll take off our shirt. Oh, wait, he took his shirt off already. James Brolin takes his shirt off a number of times, which is...
I will say, there is argument to be made, not to jump ahead, but like Ryan Reynolds topless and Margot Kidder couple, like that might be an even hotter couple.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I think Brolin has the face for sure, and like the steamy like intensity.
I mean, but
Ryan Reynolds did Pilates or something. He's going nuts.
I mean,
like most of that movie he has his shirt off. Like the people who made that movie knew, like take it off, chop some wood.
Yeah, I think they're good. Like, I think the remake casting is probably the closest you can get to what the original casting was.
Yeah.
Of course, he's like more ripped than he's ever been because that's what 2000s were, like leading men that were too strong for their own good and what have you. Okay, but we'll get into that. This movie is really good. I mean, it is. It's an interesting setup for what comes a couple of years later, which is Poltergeist, and it really kind of, I think, sets the table for that movie to take the same type of story of a family moving into a house that's haunted. Of course, I would say Poltergeist is night and day, much better of a film, but I think this movie is really good, and it's not really scary. I'd say it falls more into like a true.
Well, that's where it like kind of like watching Poltergeist today, where it kind of like struggles under the effects. Like they show too much, and it does not age well.
Yeah.
Like it's badly shown. Like Jodie in the first movie is just ridiculous. It's like two laser pointers.
Those glowing eyes, baby. Yeah, I say this movie is great. I don't really have much more to say. This is probably the one we should cover the least amount because
it's probably the most familiar. Yeah, I do like in the first three and the remake. I guess all of them a bit, but I didn't see The Awakening, which you'll educate me on. They do stick to that very the first one especially because it's the actual story, but like this breakdown of the nuclear family and like a replacement father and power struggles and just a falling apart family, which I always thought is interesting. Like, kind of like, speaking of Night of the Living Dead, it's kind of like less about the zombies. This is kind of less about the hauntings and more about like the families just falling apart. And I always thought that's kind of interesting. So since you took the lead on part 1, I'll lead us into The Possession, part 2, made in 1982.
We both like the first one, right? We fully recommend. Do you think it's a good? I guess when it comes to adaptations, so you read the book, but we both covered the story. I would say it doesn't feel. Besides him falling into like the Red Room's sludgy slime stuff.
Yeah.
Outside of that, and like rescuing the dog and stuff, like the rest of it, I would say does justice to. It doesn't really feel out of the ordinary. It does feel like it could have happened in the way that it's depicted.
Yeah, that's why I liked how it was slow. It felt like, oh, this is just a family doing stuff, and then, things happen. Sludge and saving dogs in Red Rooms. So that's why I like the first one for that. But yeah, it does. It kind of almost strangely to me doesn't belong in the same categories as the other movies because it is an adaptation and it does feel more real and it does feel more closely connected to what we talked about last week. Because from part 2, even though part 2 is a prequel and deals with this like murderous kid and kills his family, it's like pretty like obvious nod to the DeFeos, but it's not. Like they just took every liberty. Like there's not even the same amount of kids. Like it's just, and the Montellis, not the DeFeos. So am I just going into this or am I just spoiling?
Just jump right in.
Now?
No.
Okay, it's made in 1982. So how long after that was yours? Because 79 was the first one, right?
79 is the first one. Yep.
So just a couple years. They waited, like it's kind of like the Halloween to Halloween 2 break, where they knew they had a hit but weren't rushing into it.
Interesting bringing in Halloween because of who the writer is of this movie.
Eh.
Do you know who the writer is, right?
The writer, right? I don't know.
It's Tommy Lee Wallace.
Oh yeah, I did know that. Who directed? Yeah, part 3.
He part 3, and he wrote It, and he did Dark Star, and he did
Dark Star.
He did some
classic.
He did some other stuff. He did Fright Night 2.
Yeah, I'm just telling. Like, I remember hating part 2 as a kid. Like, what is this? This is
of Halloween.
Stupid. No, of Amityville.
Oh, okay.
Back to our actual topic.
I will say I had never seen 2 or 3. I've seen the remake, and then I never saw Awakening. So these were new watches
most
for
of these, me. Yeah, like I've seen. I thought I'd seen all of them, but you said 21, and I've definitely not seen 21 of them. But like the originals, like About Time and on. I mean, I watched all those as a kid. Mm-hmm. But I remember part 2. I had a best friend at the time, and he loved this movie, and it drove me nuts because he'd watch it all the time, and I hated it. I thought it was awful. But this time, like this time when I watched it for our podcast, I probably hadn't watched it in 20, 25 years. So it was surprising to me that, like, to me, out of everything that I watched for this podcast, this might be the most interesting movie of them all because it's insane. Like, there's no way this could get made now. Like the choices they made, how dark it is, and like how quickly it starts. There's nothing. There's no one to root for in this movie. Like everyone's bad. So like there's no arc of like hero. There's no final person. It's just like everybody sucks. This is awful. And then the third act is an entirely different movie. Yeah. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me go through my notes here.
11% in Rotten Tomatoes, 12 million at the box office. So it took in 70 million less.
I will never say that this is like a masterpiece of cinema or anything, but like it's so much more interesting than I thought. Just because it's gonzo.
It's based on a different book. What? It's based on Murder in Amityville.
What?
It's been released as Amityville Fact or Fiction. The book has. Okay. All right.
Anyway, so this movie starts like super, super fast. Like it's like they drive up to the house, they walk in, stuff starts happening. I think within like the first six minutes, you get like this Evil Dead camera coming from the basement of the demon, hissing at the crucifix they put up, going to this other room and bringing like a sheet and throwing it over the crucifix. Like, they're not messing around. This is 6 minutes in. Like, this place is haunted. No creepiness. This is just, this is crazy. Then we cut to like the other thing that makes this movie so controversial, I think, and bold, is there's an incestuous relationship between The DeFeo, the murderer DeFeo, the Ronnie DeFeo
Oh,
character
it is
who's
important.
not DeFeo.
It is important to know, to note that this is the family's been changed, which is interesting because a lot of the other movies are like they're just like using characters' name, like real people's names.
Yeah.
This one is fully the story Eric told us last week, but now it's Montelli's family, and then Sonny is the Ronnie DeFeo character.
Yeah, and he's really likes his sister a lot, and she's very flirty back, and things escalate from there, and it's a very strange choice. And we should say we didn't discuss any incest last week because there's nothing to say that ever happened. No one ever said it happened. There's no proof it happened. It's just this Tommy Lee Wallace wanted to write a movie about incest. That's basically what it comes down to.
Well, that might be in the book though.
I don't think it is. I mean,
have you read
the
Murder in Amityville book by Hans Holzer? I don't think you have. It might be about. I'm looking it up now. I think
full incest.
It does. It does bring in incest.
I don't like.
It also
anyway.
It also brings in
hissing at crucifixes.
Hang on. There's not a lot. It does bring in the incest though. All right, I've confirmed that. Which is so it's not Tommy Lee's fault. Leave him alone.
Even if that's not crazy enough for you, like for some reason, the dad of this family is Paulie from Rocky, and he just walks around being Paulie the whole time, and it's very strange. Like he's very like the casting of him is the strangest thing I've ever seen because the rest of them look like they belong together, like they could be a family. Then you have Uncle Paulie walking in, and he's abusive and he's mean. And it's not clear why anyone would marry him or even like continue to be nice to him. Like he just chomps on his cigar because he just walked off the set of Rocky, and he like slaps kids in front of priests. It's nuts. One scene I wanted to talk about because it's not exactly subtle, and like I was talking about the nuclear family and all that. Like this was made in the 80s, but it's dealing with something from the 70s when we're coming out of the 60s, like the free love and all that. And one of the first haunting things they do is it starts the ghosts pick up these paints of the kids and start painting on the wall, and they make like these evil pigs, like the Jody thing. But then there's like it says like pigs exclamation mark, pigs exclamation mark, and all this other stuff. And I couldn't. That has to be like a Manson quote unquote family reference, right? In the face of all this in the 60s, and like this nuclear family is falling apart, and there's like this other kind of family here. That's got to be some kind of reference, right?
I would guess yes. That's it's kind of what it feels like. It feels very culty.
Mm-hmm. It just makes that's why it's so interesting. Like I don't know what they're going for, but it seems like they're going for something like that. Like this family is dysfunctional, abusive, incestuous, and the ghosts are bringing in this like very cultish Manson family stuff. So I just thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
as for how,
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No,
go ahead.
I was just gonna agree with you. Like it's the only one of these that really like try to give Ronnie a little bit, or in this case, Sonny, try to give him some other reason other than a possession that maybe like his extracurricular activities may be the cause.
I don't know. But the way it's made, I just want to like say. The direction and stuff, like the production quality on this is like surprisingly good. Like it's directed, like there's so many really long, complicated shots of like following things through hallways. There's a scene like that scene I was talking about earlier with the hissing and stuff. They follow it even further, and they go to this mirror where what is it? Sonny is I don't know, picking his pimples or something, or shaving something in the bathroom. And like you get the shot there, and then it changes, but then the mirror comes out to watch it. It's like all these one shots, and there's like this other shot that's straight from The Conjuring. Like I think James Wan loves this movie because his one shots are a lot like this. Like there's this one that follows him from behind, then the camera goes up above and over him until he's upside down, and then it like flips around, just like The Conjuring kind of did. Mm-hmm. So just that alone, this movie's surprisingly well directed. It's nuts.
I would say that's one thing that shocked me about every one of the movies I saw is that they were more well made than most sequels are, and that they didn't really seem to spare any expense. Like I would venture to guess this is at least $5 million movie. May drop $1 million because the actors are a little bit less noteworthy, but There's also a lot more effects in these in 2 and 3.
Yeah, and it's very practical. I guess well done.
So,
but anyway, we're only on 2, and we're like halfway through our hour, so we got to go.
all right. So,
Moving along.
okay, you want to? Well, so the movie,
there's this weird. So go ahead.
Are you finishing? What are you finishing here? Are you finishing?
I just
2?
want to finish up this movie because I haven't got to the third act. That's not the movie.
Oh yeah, you got to get to
But,
so the movie does feel. I like paused it and went pee somehow in the perfect time to where. It at the same time it feels like it's like starting to drag, and then it literally feels like you just started a different movie because because something. Well, you can say what happens. I guess this is obviously a spoiler-filled conversation. If you haven't watched these movies, there's no point in listening to this. But what happens to start the third act, Eric?
Well, yeah, like I thought the movie. Well, he's basically has this little '80s Walkman, and the voices, the demon voices, are telling him to kill his family. He makes love to his sister, like all this stuff's going on. But anyway, he does it. He does the crimes that we see on TV. Like he goes through and he's shooting everybody. And you're like, okay, this is the end of the movie. This is a really short movie. You look down, it's like an hour. But then, like during the crime scene and after, you think, oh, we're just getting the final scenes. No, the priest walks up and he's like, I'm the priest. And they just give him full access to the crime scene. And he walks around and suddenly this becomes like what I don't know, like Exorcist 3, like this cop priest like investigation where he's trying to figure out what happened, and he like interviews Sonny and he does an exorcism at the end, and it's like there's like 30 minutes that are just like this entirely different movie because it's like Sonny still has the demon inside him, inside the prison and stuff, and they're going back and forth, and he takes them back to the house. They have their final showdown. It's really, really like, yeah, it's strange. Like I don't know. I don't even know what to do with it. And then he's doing this.
The demon goes into the father after he exorcises them.
Yeah, and that's the thing I didn't understand either. The father's like, take me, and then he does, and he's like, get him out of here and save it. And then at the end, he's like, oh, please no. I'm like, you just asked. Like, you just said. And then, then that's the end.
I would say like once, so like they set up like, this is definitely like the Rob Zombie version of like Ronnie DeFeo's like being a bad kid, and like has every reason to kill his at least his dad. His dad's a total fucking asshole to him. Like from scene 1, like moving in, like flicks him in the ear, trips him. Like he's just like he's just a total asshole. But then like it goes so quick those first like 20 minutes that part of me was like, oh wait, is he even? I didn't even know if he was Ronnie, and then it was like, oh, Sonny. Okay, he's Sonny. And then I was like, oh, are they even brother and sister? Because they're definitely trying to do it. And then when they do it, I'm like, oh shit, they're doing it. All right. And then they're like,
it's not even the house. Like they're already real super flirty walking up to the house. It's not the influence of the house. They're talking about
and she she helps him, which is well, she doesn't stop.
She's just running while he does all the stuff.
She doesn't stop or tell anybody. Like she runs upstairs to like fuck him again, and then he like shoos her away, and then like all hell breaks loose kind of at that point. But yeah, you're right. At that point, I was like, damn, like this movie's moving along. Like he's killed the whole family, and I was like, this movie's like 62 minutes. And then he gets arrested, and it's like, I wonder if they made the movie and they're like, what the fuck? This is only 62 minutes. Let's introduce this new father character, and I guess.
Well, in '82, The Exorcist hadn't been out too long, and that was like still huge. It just like we were saying on the Facebook Live we did earlier. It's just like felt like they're like, we should do an exorcism movie, and they're like, yeah, Amityville, and just like threw the name over the top.
I guess she does admit that she go to the father earlier, and like was like
how he got involved.
I fucked the guy, my brother, and he's like,
but seriously, if you're laying on if your brother says, let's play model, now take off your nightgown, what do you do? Not take off your nightgown, I'm guessing. But that's not how this movie goes.
I would say I was shocked about how this movie feels much faster paced than the first film. The incest thing kind of throws a wrench in it, but it is like, you're right. Actually, it is an Exorcist 3 for the series, at least to this point. In the ones that we watched, it's the closest to where it feels just like more procedural, more... I don't even know. I would say it was it was a treat to watch this movie.
Yeah, I think of all the ones we watched, this was the one where I wouldn't dare say it's like a great movie, but I was just like, I've watched a lot of horror movies. I've written horror movies. I've written books. Like, I had no fucking idea what was happening next. I'm like, what is this thing? What is happening?
I guess George Lutz tried to sue. This is the first of the Dino De Laurentiis movies in this series, and he may be the one that has the rights going forward from here. I'm not sure, but I know Lutz tried to sue him and lost, but did in the process of it get them to put on the poster, this film has no affiliation with George and Kathy Lutz, which I love. I think it's and then I did read that this movie has different cuts. So the first
I saw that.
Yeah.
And there's one on Shudder. I just saw this. I'm like, I want to see the uncut version. Like the one I saw on.
Oh wait,
Tubi
they
or
have.
whatever.
There is a different available. There's a different version.
I was looking around on the internet, and there's like Shudder has like a. Yeah.
I'm not sure which one. Well,
version.
wait, hang on. They're apparently the one that we watched because I saw they have a sex scene in there. That is a different version. Oh wait, and it says he also he rapes his mother in a different version.
Oh God!
Not just
I don't wanna see that version.
Not just rapes. He anally rapes. Very specific. And it looks like they were just more graphic in nature. So in that other scene with the mother was cut out. Okay. Yeah. So as it stands, though, like those cuts obviously make a whole lot of sense because they're very unnecessary.
Yeah, please cut that. Yes.
I
I think all these in the 80s, especially early 80s, because that's when like cocaine was a hell of a drug, right?
I think it still is, but all right.
Slamming it.
Uh-huh.
But that's like you see Wall Street and stuff. People just slamming cocaine. Like they just seem like fucking like all these movies seem like weird fever dreams.
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't hardly make any sense. And I can't help thinking they're just all coked up and just like, let's make an Amityville movie. But this time with journalists. Speaking part 3. Segue. He didn't take the bait.
No, I won't give you that. So this next one, Amityville 3 or Amityville 3D when it was released, or Amityville 3 The Demon. A lot of these I think all these besides the remake going forward have a subtitle, including the last one, which was The Possession. So this movie was made the next year. I don't know. It's still an Orion film, I believe. Yeah, it's still Orion, so it must be Dino must still have the rights here. And this movie has Lori Loughlin in it and a young Meg Ryan.
Meg Bryan has like second billing to Lori Loughlin. She's like the quirky friend to Lori Loughlin.
Yeah. This one is directed by Richard Flesher, and I was curious because this movie felt very old school while I was watching it. Like it felt like an older person directed it, and it just felt I don't know. It felt like old Hollywood, and I was curious, so I looked it up. I was like, "This is '83. Why does this feel so old Hollywood?" And it's because the guy who directed it is very old Hollywood. He directed things like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, he also did Fantastic Voyage. He did the original Dr. Dolittle. He did Tora Tora Tora, See No Evil, Soylent Green. He did The Jazz Singer.
Jeez.
And then he followed The Jazz Singer up with Amityville 3D.
Oh my gosh!
And then
Neil Diamond to this.
He also did Conan the Destroyer and Red Sonja. Those are his last 2 movies. So
I can see that. I do want to mention real quick, like the first one kept the red room, like Amityville Red. Amityville 2 had like this weird like crawl space with like decaying flesh and arms coming out of the walls and blood. And the third one has a well, like not a red room. It has a well in the basement. Okay.
Yeah, okay, so my one complaint is this movie feels very
You have one?
It feels so what I did like is the aesthetics of this movie. I think it feels cool. It feels it's notable that it feels like Poltergeist in a lot of ways. Because that came out the year prior, and I'm sure they're like, well, we got a house that's haunted. We could do the same thing. This movie was a budget of $6 million. It made 6.3 at the box office.
Oof.
And
squeaked in a profit.
And it has 5% Rotten Tomatoes.
It's bad. It's just like,
yeah,
it's bad.
So it is. It's a hard movie for me to explain because it's very convoluted. Like as I was watching it, I was like, I don't really know what's happening. But it does have
It is-
ex-cons in it. It does have, so it's like a pair of ex-cons and a journalist.
Two journalists break down this apparently these hucksters have like the seance spot that they have at the Amityville house now, and they have faking everything using the notoriety of the place, and then these two journalists come in with the police officer and bust up the whole racket. And while during this investigation, one of the journalists is like, I should buy this house. And that's basically how the movie starts.
Which is exactly how the movie Absentia starts. If you've ever seen that movie,
Yeah.
it's pretty much the same thing. It's like, they're just, it's a very hokey scene. But
I did notice there's not a lot of you know how a lot of those old movies that have the 3D behind, like Friday the 13th 3D, you see a lot of cheesy, oh look, that's supposed to be coming out of the screen at us. There's not that much of that in this movie. There's a few scenes where the title sequence, and there's a few flashlights sticking up strangely.
I mean,
Not a lot.
I feel like they forgot a lot of times that this was a 3D movie because, or they reshot it for 3D, which is probably more likely because there are sequences where 4 or 5 things happen in a row, and then there'll be 30 minutes where not one single 3D thing happens. But you get the flies in 3D, which are pretty fun and silly.
The flies are so huge and obviously plastic and just shaking in front of their faces.
Or they're they're probably shot with a rear projection, because sometimes they look like it's it looks like rear projection, like they just had a fly on a stick or something, and they shot it in 3D.
And we're back to the DeFeos here when they tell the story. It's the DeFeos who killed everybody.
Yeah.
When they tell the haunted story.
So somebody dies in this, I believe.
Everybody,
I'm trying.
The journalist, one of the journalists dies, and then the dude that bought the house is real casual about his coworker dying.
Yeah, that's what happens.
She burns up. She mysteriously burns up in a car, but the car doesn't burn, just her. Like the combustion thing. What's it?
Yeah, she blows. That scene's actually insane. She blows up. A fire starts in the car, and she's the car. Of course, this is the first time in the series that we see something supernatural happen outside the house, right? Nothing in the first two, I don't think. This follows them out.
Yeah, I'll follow you. There might be something small, but yeah, I'll follow.
This is the first time something big happens.
She was taking photos of everything. She got some weird photos, and the guy who sold the house to him dies, and she's like, "Oh, look at these weird photos of this dude."
How could you forget his name
before he dies? Sorry, I'm sorry, Clifford. But she had all this proof that she was compiling because this guy is a skeptic, the main journalist, our main character, and basically the ghost is like, "You're not gonna ruin this for us." And she had all this proof in the side of the car, and this randomly catches on fire.
I mean, she gets those photos and is trying to get it over, and then in the middle of the street, at a stoplight. A fire starts, and then she tries to put it out with her jacket or her arm, and
her leg,
she catches on fire, and then it's
but nothing else does. The car's fine.
It's a 3 or 4 minute sequence of her slowly burning alive, and then it cuts to it's actually insane how long this sequence is.
love the guy who finds her. He's just some truck driver that walks over very casually and opens the door and looks at her.
She comes. That's a 3D moment. She it's very badly done, but she like pops out and is like a very gross, like very grotesque body that looks like it's still alive. And then they have the nightmare dream about the old well in the basement, which is kind of weird.
And that's like the pathway, because in this one I think there was. Is this the one? No, that's the remake. But like that's the portal from like whatever the demon's coming from, right? Like that's where it lives. Yeah, is in the well in this one.
Yeah, this is like when they reveal the well, you're like, what is this? The ring? All of a sudden, because it looks like the same type of shit, and you're like, all right, I guess we're doing the ring here. And then they bring in, and then this is when it becomes very much poltergeist. So those two people died. Things are getting weird. And they're having nightmares, and John, the dad, ends up bringing in a paranormal investigator who he just happens to fucking be his friend.
That guy is insane.
It's
by
Robert
the way.
Joy.
They just cut.
Yeah, I love. Robert
They just
Joy.
cut to him. They just cut to him randomly, and he starts just like talking about how reality should always be in quotation marks, and like he's just explaining the plot of like how hauntings can be real. And,
Oh, it's great.
like real and not real at the same time. Like he's having like these philosophical discussions for like 10 minutes on the side of the movie. And like they have that lady in sleep deprivation for like 58 hours for some reason, and he's like giving a speech about it.
I mean, this is
It's
like
bad.
a full I mean, this last 25 minutes is them trying to condense Poltergeist in this story. So this guy
Yeah.
shows up with a whole team and all this equipment, and they're trying to prove if what Nancy saw was real. And they basically set cameras up all over the house, and then all of a sudden, like while they're doing this, like Nancy, like this being comes out, and Nancy like follows it, and they're watching her, and they're like, "No,
Yeah.
don't!" Like the dad's freaking out, like,
Well,
"I gotta go stop her." This is like very sloppily done.
Yeah, and we kind of skipped something too, because that beam is her. They had a daughter who was Lori Loughlin, because they're a broken family, which I also want to point to. Like this whole thing's about a broken family. Like they just got divorced. The guy moved here, and they have a daughter, a teenage daughter, and Meg Ryan's her little friend, and Meg Ryan knows the history of it, the house. So they go there and do some like seances and some Ouija boards, and then they go on a boat ride, and Lori Loughlin falls off and drowns. But the mother's in the house at the time and sees a very wet Lori Loughlin smiling creepily and walking around. So she doesn't believe she's dead. So she stays at the house with her daughter. And then that little beam of light is like Lori Loughlin, like, "Come with me, mommy. Come with me." And she follows it. And then what you were saying.
And so she follows it, and they're like, "No, let's just keep watching." Like the paranormal team, and the dad's like freaking out, like, "I have to stop her." Of course, she's going down to the well, and then when she gets down there,
Which is the monster. The monster that pops up is the same like prosthetic monster, right? As Sonny when he tears his face off at the end of 2.
I think it's pretty close, yeah. But then Elliot, he's the Dr. Paranormal guy. He like rushes down there, and he's like, the well's now full of liquid, and they watch this fucking spirit fly down, like 20 people, and they're videotaping it, and then he like rushes down there, and then he's like, "Oh shit, the well's full of this stuff," and then he's like, "Reveal yourself, reveal yourself." He just keeps yelling it, and then like
It comes up
unexpected.
It reveals itself.
Nobody fucking expects it. Literally leaps out from the well, like it flies out of the well. This demon, and then drags him into the. He like comes
And he's
out,
telling Lori Loughlin's ghost to run. He's like, "Run!
Yeah,
Get out
leave
of here,
me."
ghost!"
And, it makes no sense that he's
Run while
dying
you
for these
can.
people. But then he gets apparently drugged to hell, and then they all rush out. Although it really only looked like a couple people, but apparently everyone is going to run out, I'm guessing. But we follow the main characters.
And then
out.
the house blows
The house
up.
blows the fuck up. It literally explodes. And you're like, well, they can't make another one. They literally just blew the fucking house up for no reason. It just blows up, and then the well bubbles up again. And then that's the end of it. Then the movie's fucking over. But the house, I mean, the last 25 minutes of this movie, okay, I will say I enjoyed this movie. It just kept getting more batshit. It's for sure like 3 scripts combined, and they're like, how do we make the Poltergeist?
And cocaine.
Yeah, cocaine. I mean, they were just feverishly trying to make Poltergeist for sure. Like it's just what the movie feels like to me. It's a fucking trip, man. Like I would say it's worth watching it. I mean, once you get
Just don't do what we did. Don't watch them all in like
Yeah.
2 days.
well, then so Eric didn't have time to watch it because I threw it on him relatively last minute. But I watched the 2017.
Are we gonna skip over the? Are we gonna skip over the remake then?
Oh no, we can do the remake. The remake's all right. The remake won't take us quite as long, but
No, because it's kind of. Yeah, I just the main thing I loved about this was seeing the Dimension logo come up again. Remember Dimension? Oh, I miss Dimension movies.
But
I did like we're speaking of like,
and this is the first.
Amityville's always.
This is Platinum Dunes.
I don't know.
Is this?
I don't remember seeing that, but maybe.
I can't remember. Is
But
this a Michael Bay?
it did-
Is not Michael Bay?
No, but it really like it feels like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre remake a lot.
Well, I
like,
think they
it's
came out
very, like
the same
new and-
year. I think.
I think it was like 2 years. I looked it up. I think it was like a year or 2 difference. But this is after for sure. So they took it because it opens much the same way as like.
Oh,
the
it
Texas
is. It
Chainsaw
is Platinum
Massacres.
Dunes.
Okay. Yeah, it feels very much like it opens with like the DeFeo murders, which they just factually changed completely. Because I watched the remake and I was worried that we fucked up our first podcast. I'm like, oh no, like because the littlest girl's name in this movie of the DeFeos was named Jody, which is not true.
Yeah.
And she got shot in the closet in this movie, which is not true.
So
like
this movie, $20 million budget, $108 million gross, 24 on Rotten Tomatoes.
It's the least favorite of all these I saw, I have to say. Like, it was the most boring and just like, except for Ryan Reynolds
and
was
Melissa
sexy.
George are great in it though.
But Ryan Reynolds, like, I think they knew they had to salvage this movie with like his abs, and they did. Like, I stuck around for the abs.
I mean,
like he takes a bath. Like, there's a movie like the classic horror trope is the girl getting in the shower / bath and being all sexy and something bad happens. They knew he was so sexy. They're like, Ryan Reynolds, you take the bath. And he took the bath.
I mean, he's wet and shirtless in this movie a lot. So if you haven't seen this and that's of interest, get on it. I don't hate this movie. It is it is the most like Hollywood of Hollywood versions of this, in comparison to even those other two movies we just talked about.
Yeah, it's like this has just felt. I guess after watching those two like Gonzo crazy movies, this felt so boring and like kind of lame to me.
Well, and they really make
like
George a villain in this, which is kind of weird.
Yeah.
Like they try to lean a little bit more into like the Shining version. And then
it
they
is very
introduce
shiny.
They introduce like the Native American stuff in this. I mean, they cram a lot in like 89 minutes, but I in particular I do really like the when George and Kathy go out and they hire a babysitter to come in. I think that's one of the best sequences in the movie.
That babysitter is the worst babysitter in the world.
Oh yeah, she's terrible, but I do like that sequence quite a bit. It's probably like the most like original intense stuff, and then it's just like it does become like that big like early mid 2000s like it turns into like kind of an action movie at the end, and it's like it's kind of silly. I don't know.
And I forgot that it's like got the little baby Chloe Moretz in it. If you're interested in that, seeing her career from the beginning, like she's little bitty, like she's the young girl in this, and she's teeny tiny. I didn't recognize her at first. I knew she looked familiar, but I had to look her up. And she's got the red balloon for a lot of time. There's like a lot of it going on there for a minute.
Oh wow,
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that.
Like in the boathouse, there's like it's just floating randomly.
Here's a factoid about this movie. The VHS version of this was the final Dimension film released on VHS.
Oh, Dimension.
That
was one of those like crawls that always made me excited when I was young. Like, oh, Dimension. Let's do this.
Yeah, this movie's okay. So the best reviewed.
It's bad. It's bad. It's like my least. I'd rather watch 2 and 3 again.
You'd rather watch
Like
2.
to me, at least like 2 and 3 at least have like interesting things and it's crazy and you can talk to people about it. This is just like every mid 2000s horror movie. It's just so boring. Like nothing interesting happens.
Yeah, I mean,
I did want to mention that they did put the same mirror that Margot Kidder had her sexy dance in. That's still in their bedroom in this version. I appreciated that nod.
Okay, and that'll take us to our last one. So, Amityville started big, had a small budget, started big, it had 28% on Rotten Tomatoes, and then we go all the way down to this Platinum Dunes one, which had, what was it? What did I say? It was 23%. So that'll take us to Amityville: The Awakening. This is the Jason Blum one. This is the Blumhouse production. One of the last ones released. This was 2017. Again, 2018, you had the Amityville Murders, which was the DeFeo story, but they were made concurrently, not by Blum, but this one was Blum. Now, this one is the best reviewed of all the franchise at 40%. I will say that I like this movie quite a bit. It is released by Dimension. It had a limited theatrical release in October of 2017. That was probably one of the last films of Dimension Radius, THC or TWC. But so this movie, Eric hadn't seen it, so I'm just going to kind of go over it really quickly.
Pitch me this movie. Make me want to see it.
Okay, so this movie is from the director of P2, which I did like. He also did the remake of Maniac, which I think most people liked. Yeah. And the rest I haven't really seen, but those two I enjoyed both those two. So his name is Frank. I can't. I'm not gonna fuck with it. Anyways, and it's produced by Jason Blum, who I think does primarily really good work. It stars Jennifer Jason Leigh and Bella Thorne, and also what is his name? Thomas Mann and Cameron Monaghan. Those are like the biggest cast in it. They're pretty much all recognizable people from a lot of TV series. But
Yeah, that's a pretty solid cast.
I will say I haven't seen Bella Thorne in much before this, and I think she apparently she's like this internet person, and I think she's actually pretty good in this. There's some clunky dialogue here and there that kind of makes you roll your eyes, but what I think they almost did perfectly right, and they get very close to making a really fun, really engaging movie. Is that they followed the teen Belle Walker. And her family moves in. So it's she's probably, I would guess, like 17 or 18, and they move to Amityville with her mom, Joan, which is played by Jennifer Jason Leigh, and then her brain-dead twin brother, James, their dog, Larry, and then
Brain dead?
Yeah, he's comatose.
Did you say brain dead?
Brain dead, yeah. He's
Oh,
comatose.
it's not brain dead.
No.
Okay.
And then she has a little sister and then their dog. So it's a very similar setup, minus the father. Now they move there to be closer to this neurologist who's like helping treat her twin brother, who is brain dead and life support, the mom. There's definitely like something going on with the mother and the daughter, and like the daughter's like real 90s goth, and I really like it. So she goes to school, and of course she's like taunted, and she's like the goth new girl living in the Amityville house. What I fucking love about this movie is like the simplest take, and I'm shocked that it took 20 movies to get here. Is one of the kids at school? His name is Terry, fucking Terry, of course. He is a big enthusiast about the Amityville stuff, and he and his friend convince Belle to watch the Amityville 1979 movie, which he pulls out a DVD of, and it's like, let's watch this at your house, at the real Amityville house, at 3:15 in the morning, because that's when the DeFeo is killed.
So it goes in it's outside of the movies, but it recognizes that the movies existed.
Correct. This movie recognizes that
right.
the Lutz family lived there, that there was a movie based on it, and that's famous. I don't know I don't think I'm going to spoil anything else, because I do think this movie is very worth watching. I think there's some clunky stuff in the third act, but I do like where it ends. And there's a fucking crazy ass creature in the, not creature. What it does with like the demonic stuff in this is actually pretty creepy and very unsettling. It's very close to being, a really good movie. I mean, it kind of walks the like late 90s, like The Craft, or I Know What You Did Last Summer. It kind of feels like that, because it's, for a lot of it, you're following this teen and these two friends. And I think it would have been, if it would have kept on that, it would have been more successful, because the first portion of the movie is this. But there's a couple moments where I was like, this is creepy. I mean, I think the audience gets ahead of what's going to happen before it happens. And there's just some kind of hokey technology stuff. Red from That 70s Show is the neurologist. I fucking love it. It's I would say watch this movie. This is it's worth your time if you like that like late 90s stuff, like Urban Legend or the Craft. I think like all those movies have good like two out of three of their acts are really strong, and then usually kind of crap the bed at the end. This is kind of the same thing, although the end is like more fun, I think. And this would have played better, I think, had it got a wider release. I'm kind of shocked it didn't. But yeah, 40% Rotten Tomatoes, making it the best reviewed of the Amityville series. I'm very glad I watched it. I don't know if I'm going to watch an Amityville movie for quite some time, so I'm glad I ended on this one. I think check it out. I think this is.
I kind of want to watch it now.
I think it's and this one. So the first three movies use the same exterior house. This one notably feels like it's not in the same. It's not even close to the same house. Like there's three. They probably built sets for the whole thing, I'm guessing, and had an exterior, because it feels like a much smaller house. It doesn't. I mean, the Amityville house, especially in that first movie, when you get like kind of a grasp on like how truly big this house is. This one doesn't. This one feels like it's a tiny, tiny house. Like when they're in the kitchen, you're like, this kitchen is fucking tiny, dude. That house is a mansion. It's like whatever we said in the last one, like 8,000 square feet or some shit.
Yeah. I've noticed that, like, in the remake, the house looked massive.
Yeah.
Like, it didn't look like the house anymore. And I remember, I don't remember which one it is, but I remember there's this one Amityville movie I saw where it was like, it seemed like it was a ranch. It wasn't even the same house, and they put in security footage. It was like a found footage one.
Oh yeah, that was.
And they just put the title on.
Well, I remember that one.
I saw that. I remember that. It was a while ago. I don't remember which one it was, but I just remember being very confused because they put the Amityville above it, but the movie had nothing to do with any of it. So,
which one was that? Was that Legacy? No. I don't know, but there's a lot of them we're not talking about because they were all direct to video. I did watch a couple of the early 90s ones because they were on TV. Like, I know I saw It's About Time and A New Generation. I don't think I saw anything after that. But it's fascinating to me that this true life, crime and murder, like that this and then this supernatural story spawned 21 films. And really kind of changed the tone of American, like, haunting films, I would say. I mean, you had The Exorcist.
Yeah.
I mean, 1979, the ghost stories that come before that, you're talking like, I mean, dramatically different ghost stories. You're looking at, like, The Legend of Hell House. You're looking at
well, they have, like, The Haunting. Like, that's kind of similar too. But
yeah, but they're such big and grandiose. Like, those movies are not like, I don't know.
I do think it's so I'm glad we picked this because that's what I was kind of just going to ask you is, like, why do you think that this, like, captured so much of us that there's 21 movies, even though 19 of them probably have nothing to do with the actual mythos of it, but, like, that name sticks with everyone. Like, everybody knows this story and everybody knows the DeFeo stuff, and, like, why this? There's so much out there that it's interesting.
I was just peeking in the. I was just peeking just to see if I'm not missing any old haunted house movies, but I think like up to this point, you have, like, some really great films like The Haunting, Legend of Hill House, House on a Hill. You have those types of films, but you don't really have a movie like this. Like, this is like, and I may be way wrong, but this is, from what I can recall, this may be the first, like, family moves into house is haunted, family has to leave house movies.
Yeah, I think it's the first, like, where it enters that, like, what we're saying, like, how zombie movies are more about the collapse of, like, society and human relations and, like, racism and, like, everything, whatever they want to lay over it, like mall culture or whatever. Like, the Amityville seems like it is, like, the ghost story is just the foundation for family dysfunction. I think that's kind of what it is.
Yeah, I think it's
what they explore.
Yeah, I think this is because it sets that, because it took these like big Hollywood style ghost stories and they took them and made it into something that is in our home, our homes now, and affects our family and our way of life. That it wasn't just going to this old castle or old mansion that was haunted and kind of various levels of hokey, but it was like it's in a modern house, and I think that created the American ghost story, probably. I mean, or at least like the cinematic ghost story.
Well, just the metaphor of it too, like, because, like, it's pretty easy to take. There's been so many haunting movies that do this, but, like, and books and stories, but this is, like, the first time where it was kind of like a metaphor. Like, these ghosts are, like, their ghosts. Like, it's like the Lutzes, they're like this, like, mixed family trying to make a life of it, and all the things that haunted them in the past are still there.
Yeah,
like, it's kind of interesting.
Yeah,
I mean,
like, it's interesting having watched the sequels, because the first one and the book and the story, it not only takes, it's so many things that changed. It is weird that we picked this one because I just threw it out there and we're like, all right, that sounds good. It seems like it encompasses it, but what it really is like it creates the modern urban legend and ties it with a true story, which those things are so, like, commonplace now. You hear, like, oh, it's rooted in truths, and that's how all most great legends are. But you have, like, this horrendous crime, and you have this, like, urban legend story that's larger than life, and then you create that into like a best-selling novel that goes into, and then that's resurrected in a different way to create a modern American ghost story. And then in the sequels, they're chasing something else. They're chasing, kind of, more of a slasher movie almost in the second one, by way of the carnage. It's kind of relishing in like its villain in a way, because it's all from his perspective. And then by the time you get to 2, it's trying to copy a movie that was inspired by it. It's trying to copy Poltergeist, and it's trying to chase something that it's not really. It's trying to take Poltergeist and be an Amityville movie, and it's not. And then that's why probably when I got to Awakening, it was the first time since the first one that I felt like it was at least trying to do something in the realm of freshness, and not just trying to like copy something else that's already been done, but bring it up to a modern taste. Now, again, that movie isn't my favorite movie of all time. It was just a fun one in the series, and a refreshing take after the last 2 I had of this 3D movie and this incest fest. But it is interesting that
incest fest.
Yeah, but it's interesting that we took
Coming
this,
soon.
right? That because it's a I don't know if it's really looked upon as being this like monumental film and series, but it really is. I think like in what it did for the American like horror film and ghost story.
Yeah, it's not. I didn't really think we'd get here, but we did. Like, when I watched these movies, I just thought we were going to talk about how they related to the story and stuff, but it's really became a lot more than that. Like, I don't know. Like,
I mean, do you think
nuts.
you have Poltergeist without this movie coming out 4 years before, or 3 years before?
I don't know. That's hard to say, but like Poltergeist does like build on a lot of the tropes, like the building on like dead bodies and stuff. And
I mean, it even uses like, a level of Native American culture and like stuff that was presented in if not this book or this movie, in one that came right before Poltergeist. So it is interesting. Like, I've never considered Poltergeist be an inspired by or ripoff of Amityville, but I would certainly say we don't have Poltergeist without this movie and this book and this story.
I don't know about not having it, but like it's definitely like, yeah,
I don't know.
started a bunch of. Like, it definitely influenced it, but I mean, I'm not willing to say, like, that's why we have this. You know what I mean? Like, that seems a bit bold, but
I mean,
I'm with you that it definitely influences it.
You have, it's 3 years later from release. It's the same studio that made it. It's the same, almost the exact same budget. It's taking, it's working with not only Spielberg, of course, but you have Tobe Hooper and Frank Marshall. So you're taking the sensibilities and turning it into like a PG film, rather than like what's it look like if we take, I guess E.T. was being made at the same time, but if you do
Same neighborhood, right?
next door, right? Same shit happened. But almost 3 years to
Got
the
ghosts, you
date,
got
it
aliens.
was made. I can only imagine that MGM is coming up with this after the success of that.
Yeah,
because it's not.
You're probably right.
I mean, I don't know, but it just seems kind of interesting. But maybe I'm wrong. But it appears that there's just so many similarities, and the success of this movie and this franchise, and the story, and making this suburban ghost story that didn't really exist in Hollywood until this point. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's. I mean, we'll eventually cover the Poltergeist films, I'm guessing, at some point, and they have a whole mess of stuff
Better.
around them. Yeah, and actually, I'm excited to do that because I haven't seen those sequels in quite some time, and I remember
Part 2 is bad. I remember that. I think part 3 is fun. But part 2 is pretty bad.
got the creepy tall guy that comes.
They all.
I can't
yeah,
defend
they-
anything I haven't seen in so long, so I won't even try.
Yeah, I think that tall guy becomes the villain now.
Yeah,
like,
I think
through
so.
all the sequels.
I think that's true. Yeah, so that's Amityville. I think it's a fascinating story. I don't know. I think watching the adaptation for me, it's like, well, if it were real, that's a pretty faithful adaptation, minus the slime thing in the first film, which even George is like, oh no, that's not real. That's kind of rolls his eye at and says that they took creative liberties. But outside of that, it feels like it tonally and realistically could have happened based on what their story is. And yeah, I think the legend here is ongoing. I don't think the Awakening will be the last film we see.
You think? I don't know. I don't know if anyone's interested anymore, but maybe.
I don't know. Do you think? I mean, we've had 21 movies since '71, so in 41 years, we've had almost every other year we get a movie.
You're right. If it's still making money, they're going to do it. But I do think, I think there's more to this than that. When we started this, I thought that's all we're going to be talking about. It was like the real life murders, this supposed haunting, and then these bad movies that resulted. But I think there's more to it than that. There's this like you were talking about, a big cultural shift of how we see hauntings and how it reflects us, and how haunted houses are not just ghosts or demons after us. It's it's our own past traumas and stuff coming after us.
I love your background.
That's interesting stuff.
I didn't want to acknowledge it, but I do love it.
It's a little uncomfortable because I feel like I have to lean over to get her in the frame. But
okay, well, I think that's it. I don't know. We haven't decided what next week's episode is, but I'm sure it'll be a banger. Yeah, I think that's. I don't think I have anything else to add about the Amityville. We've run a little bit long here, but we covered a long franchise and ran into a moment of time when we didn't expect that the influence this film has really had, and not just movies but culture. And I think, this is it was a fun series to dive into that I haven't. You had done it already, but to watch 5 of these movies, I'm exhausted from the haunted house film. I was taking a lot of palate cleansers of slasher movies and stuff during this, but it was a good time. I think I would recommend at least once watch, not back to back like we did, but covered.
No, don't do
over
that.
A month would be fine. Yeah, over a month you can do it. Don't do it over 5 days.
I don't even think that this would be necessarily a good marathon. Don't line it up. Just go through at your leisure. If you do too many in a short amount of time, it gets very redundant.
And that's any franchise, right? You can't. No one's watching 4 or 5 Bond movies and they're not getting burned out, right?
I don't know. Yeah, you're probably right. But I feel like I've gone through the Friday the 13th a lot faster than I could go through this.
I'm up to 9. Well, we'll talk about that. Okay, well that's it. Let's wrap it up here. That's the Amityville Horror Part 2 of 2. We will be back next week. Be sure to, if you haven't already, subscribe, tell your friends. If you have suggestions for shows, feel free to email us at nightmarehourpod@gmail.com.
Yeah. Please.
Or if you want to talk to us.
Like he said, man, just say hello. But we really are, as of right now, we are empty for next week. So if you have ideas, something you really want us to talk about, Facebook us or Gmail us, and we'll do it.
Yeah, and if you watch these movies and you want to chat along and hear a deeper perspective, feel free to send us an email. One of us will respond to you, our off mic thoughts. But yeah, we this was a fun way to start the series. I think it's in the right direction, and
get out.
Oh, I think you're gonna say kill them all. I was like, ooh. Here we go. All right, that's it.
Oh, the end of the podcast. Get out.
Yeah.
See,
we'll
go.
We'll see you next.
Go.
We'll see you next time. I'm Adam.
Is that going to be our outro?
Get out. No, I don't think
Maybe?
so. I don't like it. No.
Okay.
But we will have a sign off eventually. So, all right. Without no more words, Eric. I'm Adam, and he's Eric, and we'll see you next time on the Nightmare Hour podcast.
Word.